everyone, I am Rebecca from ChemKnits, and today we are going to play around with a dyeing technique I first used for a Leave No Dye Behind, but we're going to try to do this with a little bit more intent because the effect that I got from applying dry dye powder to wet non-superwash yarn, moving it, adding more powder, and then pouring water on top of that was gorgeous and soft, and I want to try it again. Before I go talk a little bit more about the project, I want to give a huge shout out and thank you to today's lab partner, Addie. Addie, thank you so much for being my lab partner today. In my pan, I have 300 grams of Knit Picks Wool of the Andes worsted weight yarn. This yarn is 100% Peruvian Highland wool. It is non-superwash, and well, I've dyed it a lot here on this channel. Now, the thing that's going to be different today from the Leave No Dye Behind video that I mentioned is that I'm going to be using straight acid dye powder, not powders that have already been mixed with citric acid. So that means I will be adding more pigment than what was added in that other video. The reason why we're starting with damp yarn, and I pre-soaked this overnight, is so that way when we add the powder and move it, the powder isn't all going to like fall off and fall to the bottom. The powders will kind of stick to the yarn a little bit, and we'll be able to see them, I think, a little bit better than if the yarn was dry. Now, I do have a yarn mop that I started using in another video. This is a skein of Knit Picks Stroll fingering weight yarn that is 75% superwash merino, 25% nylon. I pre-soaked it in some water with vinegar, and I'll be using this to wipe my gloves onto over the course of this video. But now I'm gonna go get suited up with my deluxe rubber respirator mask, safety glasses, and gloves so we can start dyeing the yarn. Today we are gonna be playing with a fluorescent orange, which is a color that I've always enjoyed playing with. Because of fluorescent yellow pigments in it, this is a color that usually will be really, really bright. We are also gonna use a fluorescent red color, which is not a color I've played with very much, and so I'm excited to see more about what this does. I'll add some more of this red over here. I'm going about things in a little bit more of a repeating way, because you'll see in a moment with my next color, which is an aqua. And I want to make sure that this does not combine too much with our orange, because I don't want to make a brown. But oh, these colors together are so pretty, and I wonder how much this aqua might blend with our red. So yeah, this is a little bit more, I think, repeating than what I often might do. But I am excited to see where we go. And this is feeling like we got a lot of color on here. But this aqua is a color that does break, I think. In the powder, you can even see some of the yellows in there. And so I think that this is just going to be stunning. Now that I'm looking at it, though, I think I want to add a little bit more orange, just sort of onto the tips of the yarn, just so we get a little bit more color coverage. I'm almost going to be sad when it's time to put water onto this because it's so pretty already. But now I'm going to flip the yarn. And I don't want to flip it this way and blend the colors that much. I want to pick up the yarn from either end and just, to the best of my ability, flip it over, which maybe is going to work better in stages. And I can have one hand on the more blue part and one hand on the more orange and pink. I mean, it's a red, but it's like it's a little bit more red than pink, but it's still very bright. All right, my yarn mop is getting a lot of beautiful use right now. It would be fun to do a project where I blend this orange and aqua to see what we get, because when I've blended a fluorescent orange with a fluorescent green in the past, we got a lot of beautiful, beautiful fall tones. But I'm planning on following mostly a similar pattern on the side. I may need more orange than what I've grabbed out over here, but also maybe not. It's okay if where I'm placing the dye this time does not line up exactly. I'm really curious to see how these colors will spread. Now, I didn't measure the amount of dye that I took out before starting this, but I could have. And so aliquoting out some dye before I start could be a way to do a technique like this that has an element of randomness to it in a more reproducible way. Because if I know how much dye I'm adding to the pan each time, then I can reproduce that. Okay, I'm coming in with some of the fluorescent red, which as it spreads out is definitely leaning a lot more pink than red, but sort of where it first lands, it does feel a little bit deeper and more red. And especially compared to some fluorescent pinks like hot fuchsia or fluorescent fuchsia, it is much more red leaning. I think there's probably some yellow in it, but it doesn't seem to break. Actually, the only one that's colored that, I see some breaking in with the orange. I see some pinks and yellows. I was going to say the only one where I seem to see breaking is sort of our aqua color, but I don't think that that's necessarily true. I did grab out a lot of this powder. And in the flip, this blue is the color that I see the most of, sort of peeking through. I didn't squeeze out a lot of the dye before we got started here. What I did do, but we also have no acid in our yarn yet. But that is about to change because I think we're ready to add liquid on here. I'm now coming in with water. We have about 8 cups of temp water with 4 tablespoons of white vinegar. And we're going to pour this onto our yarn. Specifically pouring over where I can see some of our dyes. Just letting the colors spread. I'm using a lot of acid because I want to allow the colors to start striking. I'm going to go get some more water with acid. Here, we've got about the same proportions here. This colorway is starting to feel a little bit similar to a colorway that I did where it was a leave no dye behind. Oh, we're seeing some spread. It was a leave no dye behind. Let's spread color in here. The other colorway was a leave no dye behind, and I thought I had a black, but I actually had a blue. And so I mixed it with some oranges. And this is really, really pretty. It is taking, I'm going to poke it in a little bit, but I'm trying to not spread things out too much because I'm wondering if some of this tonal variation that we see will sort of stick around. And I think that this is very, very pretty. We have a lot of acid in here. A lot of acid. And we don't know what's happening underneath. So let's take it to the stove so we can start heating things up. I'm still wearing my mask because I have some dye powders out that I need to clean up. But my hypothesis is that the colors towards the bottom are a lot more saturated. Because we saw as we poured the dyes on, the color almost disappeared, which makes me think it sort of moved down. And we did have color on the bottom of here. But so I have the heat on high-ish at the moment. I do want to do one thing and sort of kind of clean up some dye that I could see on that back edge. But otherwise, I'm trying not to disturb the yarn so we can see what kind of pattern we ended up with. We definitely have blending going on in here, but I'm so curious what this will look like. I'll check back in, I think, in about 10 minutes. It is occurring to me that maybe I didn't want to go straight to 16 cups of water because that's going to allow more colors to spread and blend. But we'll see what happens. Our yarn mop is looking so fun. I love the combination of these colors. And with the last little bit of dye that we have left, I'm going to try to just kind of wipe it up in a way that maybe doesn't blend things too much, but will spread things maybe a reasonable amount. We have a lot of the red color, so I'm going to start by tapping. Ooh, look at that. Colors tend to end up feeling less pigmented and saturated on non-superwash yarn. That's just sort of the way things end up because we didn't add a tiny amount of color. But I do think we probably have more pigment overall here on this mop. Yeah, this, all these colors are so fun. And this combination is new for me to use intentionally. And I really hope that we won't see a lot of color bleeding here. We may end up leaving a tiny amount of some of these dyes behind, but we definitely used up most of it. And so now, off camera, I'm gonna go steam set this sock yarn. It's been 10 minutes, we're nice and hot, and the thread really feels pink. I probably needed to use a lot more of it for it to stay red. All right, I'm seeing a lot of blue. Ooh, look at that purple. I mean, the blues are definitely spreading. I still see some pink, and the orange seems to have mostly cleared. I'm not gonna try to wiggle things at all yet. I do not want to wiggle. I'm gonna add more acid though, especially on the Aqua. A little bit down here as well. Again, I have no idea what's going on beneath the surface. I think this is really, really pretty. It's just, I should have maybe, it seemed like I added a lot of the orange and red, pink. It's really a pink. But I was expecting them to have a little bit more punch like the blue, but I think that also the blue blending in, that's kind of created a deeper color. So anyway, I'm gonna let this go, I guess, another 20 minutes, and then we'll check back in. I also want to add that if I had wanted the colors to spread out less, I could have added acid to the yarn originally. If we had acid in there, then the colors would have potentially started to strike a little bit. And if I had added less water overall, if after adding the 8 cups I sort of pressed things down versus adding another 8 cups, that might have also prevented some of this creep that we're getting from the blue, which is beautiful. It's just not quite what I was originally going for. This is really feeling like the yarn from that other video, and I promise these colors are all completely different. Oh my goodness. All right, it's looking like the colors are clearing. I'm just curious. I don't think things necessarily look that much darker down below. Maybe I just needed to use a lot more of the red and orange. And I mean, I do think I used a lot more of this color. But anyway, I'm gonna turn off the heat and leave the yarn in here to cool completely so we can wash it. And as for our yarn mop, this is my steamer basket. I am just turning off the heat here as well. Here we could see the vivid colors in all of their glory. I'm very excited to wash this, and I hope nothing bleeds. I'm actually gonna leave it in here for a little longer and let it cool slowly. And then later, in like half an hour or so, I'll remove it to let it cool completely before I wash it. The yarn is all cool, so let's stick the yarn mop in first. Oh, it's so pretty. The colors almost glow. And here is our non-superwash yarn. Picking it up, I'm seeing a little bit less purple than I felt like I was seeing. And the orange and, well, the red is more of a pink, are definitely distinct. I wish that the red gave us more. Actually, there, that's looking quite red. I guess actually that's the red more than the orange. But it's still pretty. Now we have to see if things bleed, because sometimes with both blues and fluorescent colors you can get bleeding, but I didn't see any yet. Let's add some clear dish soap, and we're gonna fill the basin up. But as we fill that up, I'm not seeing any color left in the dye bath. I just see some staining that was on my pan beforehand. So that is always good. And man, I think the fact that we're not seeing any bleeding is great. Are we seeing? No, we're not seeing any bleeding. So I am going to finish rinsing out all of the soap, and then I'm going to put all the yarn through my spin dryer and hang it up to dry. But actually, I will add that part of me was hoping for the brighter colors, but also I left a lot of white in there, and so the little bit of color we added did spread and cover the yarn, which ultimately was one of the goals. The goals was to have something really, really soft. And so if I wanted the colors to be deeper, I would have needed to add more dye. I did not cover the dye all over. The more I look at this yarn, the more I can't help giggle internally, thinking about how this is so close to a colorway I created with leftover acid dyes, where I thought that a blue I was using was actually black, and then it turned out blue. I did not intentionally go out to try to create that same colorway, but I do really like this yarn. Has a very, very sunset tropical feel to me. You feel the like wispiness of the colors in the clouds. I don't think the camera can pick up how, yes, there's paleness here, but these colors also have a neon quality to them. Ooh, the pink and the orange happen to be fluorescent. You can really see that in the yellow and the pink a bit more. Our teal is not fluorescent, and if we want to see this even more, you can check out our yarn mop, where the neon colors, oh, do they glow, those fluorescent colors. Ooh, those are bright. I really, really like the colors. Speaking of her yarn mop, this was a little bit more like the palette I was going for. I feel like I didn't use that much more of the blue-green that I did either the red or the orange. So yeah, I think that I could have pumped up the volume, but I do also struggle to get colors that feel really saturated and intense in general on non-superwash yarn, because the colors overall tend to spread more. And had I used a lot more dye, that orange and red may have overtaken the teal altogether. And so, yeah, I don't know. I'll have to give this another shot someday. I feel like a lot of the time when I dye variegated yarn, I'm dyeing something more like this, where we have color patches with a lot of contrast, and they're very randomly distributed on the yarn so it's non-pooling. And I don't spend as much time doing something like this, where the colorways are a little bit more traditional repeating. Not that this one is perfectly traditional, but I have been trying to do more colorways that could repeat lately, and I have been enjoying the process a lot, and so I would like to continue exploring that. And if you would like to join that exploration, please subscribe and turn on notifications so you don't miss any new videos. I want to give another huge shout out and thank you to today's lab partner, Addie. Addie, thank you so much for being my lab partner. I had a blast dyeing this yarn, and again, I'm excited to dive into this type of variegated colorway more, both on superwash and non-superwash yarn bases. Look at the way these colors blended that you can really see at the tip here. It is so, so pretty. And I think one thing I struggle with on non-superwash yarn is sometimes the colors blend too much and I lose some of that variation. But we've got a lot of tone and variation in this colorway, and so I adore it, and I'm really, really happy. I am Rebecca from ChemKnits, and thank you so much for watching.